News 580 KUBC. Good morning. It is 8:16. Let's check in with Michael Fields. Good morning, Mr. Fields. How are you?
Hey, Dan. I'm good. How are you?
Thanks for coming out today. And David White is here, too. Hi, David. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Dan.
Hey, Michael, you're with Colorado Rising Action. Tell me about that organization.
So we're a new organization here in Colorado, and we're a 501c4, and basically what we do is work to educate Coloradans, promoting conservative principles, holding the left accountable. So we do a lot of tracking, research, rapid response communications. So we're just getting started here and hope to be able to make a difference.
Jared Polis was the topic of one of your press releases recently. He is not taking part in a Club 20 debate?
That's correct. So this is Club 20 has been around for 65 years. They've been doing these debates for over 30 years, and this is the first major gubernatorial candidate who decided to skip this debate. And it's on a Saturday, but I guess he has a scheduling conflict, is what he said. But I think there was a lot of stories about this, a lot of people that were upset, and I think because the perception is that Jared Polis has a lot of work to do in rural Colorado, and skipping the big debate out there in the Western Slope wasn't the smartest idea.
Right. I think if you're running for state office, you don't always want to preach to the converted. You want to go to the part of the state where you don't have a lot of support and maybe win over some people. Isn't that a good move, David? You're a politician.
Well, of course it would be, but somebody like Jared this is not his base. I mean, by far, the Boulder, Denver Metro, progressive liberal element is his base. Not to say that Pitkin County, San Miguel County, etc., aren't already behind him, but he needs to be preaching to them too, and being at Club 20, which is an organization originally founded to represent the 20 counties of western Colorado. 2 were later added, but they still call it Club 20, even though there were 22 counties. It's certainly a snub against western Colorado, but Mr. Fields would know better than I if Mr. Polis really needs western Colorado.
Does he, Michael?
Well, I think you need every part of the state, and if Mr. Polis isn't going to do well in western Colorado, he doesn't want to do even worse. And I think that I think any candidate who's running statewide for office should care about all Coloradans. And everywhere you go, people want to know what your plan is to fix the roads. It's a huge issue everywhere. They want to know what your plan is in education and health care. I think that every candidate should be able to face the voters in that area and at least talk about their plan, converse, get some feedback, because you can incorporate stuff into your current plans. And I think the fact that Jared Polis is deciding to not do it and then hasn't even backtracked. I mean, you'd think after the Denver Post writes a story, everybody else is talking about this, that he would say, you know what, I'm wrong, I'm going to show up. I think he's just doubling down and being stubborn on this.
Michael, 4 years ago, you had Bob Beaupre versus Hickenlooper. Hickenlooper, the incumbent, but it was still a pretty close race, if I remember right. But this race is an open seat, technically. So, do Republicans, do they have more confidence this time around, do you think?
I think they do. I think, Cory Gardner that same year was able to beat Mark Udall. I think it depends on what candidates are running. How much did they go around the state and provide a positive message. But I also think, the left and Jared Polis are moving kind of further away from, especially people on the Western Slope, but people in Colorado with, pushing for single-payer health care that got crushed in Colorado a few years ago, pushing for billion-dollar tax hikes, unnecessary regulation. So I think as, nationally, kind of the Democrats and the left move further away from the people, there is an opportunity this year for Walker Stapleton.
Well, tell me about Jared Polis's worldview. He's got a great education, and he's got a lot of money.
Yeah, he's one of the wealthiest members of Congress. I mean, the numbers that I've seen are roughly $400 million when you look at the companies that he's founded, Blue Mountain Arts, and he had a company called American Information Systems, and he also was behind the company called Pro Flowers, which, internet-based buy flowers and whatnot for your loved one. But, I mean, the guy's extremely wealthy. He's, close to $1 billion in sales of the companies, and his net worth supposedly is in the 400 million range. So it's not like he can't buy his way to where he wants to be.
So does this mean he's entrepreneurial? That's a good thing, isn't he, if you're a Republican?
Well, sure. But what often happens with people that make a lot of money is, they become very philanthropic, which he is, but for his causes, which tend to be very liberal and very progressive in nature. He's against fracking. He's all about education, which is fine, but then again, a more liberal bent. He started charter schools in the Denver metro area, and to expand his worldview to the youth. So
Michael Fields, he's not a moderate, is he?
No, he's not at all. I mean, he's been building up the left's infrastructure in the state since 2005 with all the money that he has. And I think one thing that people will not respond positively towards is the fact that there was a story this week that he's doubled his wealth since getting into Congress. It feels like everybody who goes to D.C., you look at the Clintons or anybody, they make a whole lot of money while they're supposed to be doing public service. And, I think it also shows when you make out-of-touch votes. I mean, this last week, there was a bill to put a 2.6% pay increase for the troops, and he said that, he voted against it because it was going to be too expensive, but then pushes for a $33 trillion single-payer plan. So I think a lot of this, is ideological and out of touch with just the common person.
Well, and he's very openly supportive of, lesbian, gay, transgendered issues.
Well, I should hope so. He is gay, isn't he?
Of course, yeah. He and his partner have 2 children, and I don't know if they're adopted or, test tube babies. I don't know how that happens.
Gentlemen, this guy is a rising star in the Democrat Party, isn't he?
He is. Tim Gill, if you've ever heard of the Gill Foundation, and what was it that was it Quark, one of the software or Oracle, or one of the big technological companies Tim Gill started, and so he and a guy by the name of Pat Stryker and Rhett Bridges, they are some of the wealthiest Coloradans that donate to liberal causes, and lesbian gay issues are, one of those that he's behind, and he can do with his money as he wants. I mean, I don't have any issues with that, but I mean, it relative to forcing his belief system onto everybody else, as governor, who knows what could happen, because again, it's acceptance of everything, and do away with the old, come in with the new, the progressive type of element. And he's gotten, as Mr. Fields said, this big flap over Medicare for all. I mean, the Gazette newspaper in Colorado Springs wrote an editorial about that just yesterday, and it's something that's basically it's a Bernie Sanders thing, and it's going to bankrupt us all. These utopian ideas. I mean, I'm not saying we need to fix it as far as the healthcare system in this country, but holy cow.
His solutions are very Orwellian.
They are.
Michael, this gentleman, if he becomes governor, he'll run for president someday.
He might. I mean, his first seat was the Board of Education. He spent, I think, $5 million to win that. He spent $8 million on his congressional race. He's already spent $13 million in this race. And so, I think to your question of if he's a rising star, I don't know. We'll see, come November if that's the case or not. But I think there is this reaction to him trying to buy elections, to spend all this money. And there's a lot of Democrats who don't get along with him well, who aren't huge supporters of him. So we're going to see if this all this money that he's spending pays off.
By the way, you can go to ColoradoRisingAction.org to learn about the organization that Michael represents. Walker, I'll give you a wrap-up question here, Michael. Walker Stapleton, does he have the moxie? Does he have the smarts? I mean, to beat this gentleman?
Well, I think the first step is at least he's showing up to the Club 20.
Well, that helps.
I think, to at least show and talk about the plans that you have for the state is a good thing. I definitely think that he could beat Jared Polis for the reasons that we talked about. Jared is far to the left, is extreme. Walker's, conservative, but a lot more mainstream for Colorado. So it'll be an interesting race to watch. But, this snub for Club 20 is not going to play well for Jared Polis.
Does Stapleton have the money?
He can get it if he doesn't.
Well, it takes money to win this.
Oh, yeah, it's going to take a lot of money.
And
it's when you have Barack Obama and the Democratic
machine,
yes. And one of the groups that Polis has been involved in is the Red to Blue program. He's chair for the Democratic National Committee, and so recruiting and raising money for Democrat candidates in competitive congressional districts. So, I mean, he's very involved in the leadership, and so you have to believe that the Bernie Sanders faction, the Pelosi, the Dianne Feinsteins, I mean, these are the folks that he associates with, which, I mean, again, that's his prerogative. Does that fit with what Colorado wants as a governor? That's the real question. And, you can already project the special interest groups that might in fact support him, who will run independent smear campaigns, if you will, against Walker Stapleton or things that Walker Stapleton has done, or issues that they will modify, if you will, in order to gain votes, sympathetic or empathetic type votes for some of the things that Polis says. And I mean, I don't have to tell Michael that. I mean, he's watching it much more closely from where he is than we are able to here in Montrose, Colorado. But there's going to be a concerted effort, and today's world, I mean, information bites, commercials, whether it's a radio commercial or an ad on, pops up on your phone on Facebook or whatever. It's people are taking things in very tiny doses, and it's very effective in how they see the world, and it may not be a reflection of reality, but it changes their opinions.
Michael, ColoradoRisingAction.org. You're relatively new, but we'll be hearing more from you guys, I assume, right?
That's right. I'd love to come back on your show again at some point, but ColoradoRisingAction.org.
All right, and a lot of stories on there. Michael, thanks. You have a great day, okay?
Thanks, you too, Dan.